The candidature of Right Honorable Raila Odinga is yet to be confirmed by the AU. I think should be next year in February. And therefore he remains a candidate. That hasn't barred him from still communicating or commentating on issues that are affecting Kenyans until probably he assumes to that position. However, I think the magnitude of his engagement and the depth of his engagement could be questioned. And to that extent, probably I want to agree with Dr. Rotich. Now, the act, Daktari, does not really spell out what he needs to do before he ascends to the position, like any other candidate. But until the heads of states will gather in, next year, where he will formally be voted in to be in that position. But I think to this extent, his preparation is on the exiting political scene. And to that extent, I think he just handed over last week, which of course was another highlight of the week, where he convened the ODM, National Central, the Party Central Committee, and handed over the party leadership and instrument to the new, party leadership as he plans to exit from, being actively involved in the Kenyan issues. But I think to this far was his comment, was his observation, was it opinion that is rightfully, as a Kenyan, that he can express.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so based on what you've said, Dr. you're right. Okay, despite protest, Raila now backs Ruto Adani deal. That was the front page of the Standard newspaper. Despite protest, Raila now backs Ruto Adani deal. He was speaking yesterday in Mombasa. Opposition boss says that the controversial deal could be a game changer as company has delivered in other parts of the world. So that is as far as the Adani deal is concerned. Leaders call for an end to Tana River clashes. Several people have so far died, and top leaders, including Governor Dado, was also apprehended over the weekend by the sleuths, and now questioning still continues. So there we have it. Gachagwa's moment of truth draws closer. That is his impeachment on the front page. And Daktari, again, adios. That is Princess Julie, the Dunia Mbaya hitmaker. She took her last over the weekend. Again, light and grace to the family. Senate seeks to reclaim its upper house status in DP impeachment in the inner pages of the Standard newspaper. And finally, DP options if Senate or court saves him. That is what I've here. A bit of it. An acquittal by the Senate or the courts would give the deputy president a new lease of life. Number two, political observers believe that even if Gachagua survives, he will have a hard time fighting in Ruto's government. Wakili, what do you make of the two?
Well, I think the two depend on Gachagua himself. Yes. But for now, he may not have full control of the situation until the impeachment process determines. First and foremost, we must admit that Gachagua is not impeached. He's still the deputy president of this country. There are two processes, legal processes that are involved. The first is the committal process. We used to have that process in murder cases in courts, where committal bundles are prepared by the lower courts or magistrates courts, and then they're submitted to the High Court for purpose of trial. So the committal bundles were to investigate where there are tribal issues or issues that could be tried by the Senate. And then the Senate now goes to full trial, meaning it's going to hear witnesses, interrogate the charges as prescribed or drawn, and then there will be a process of cross-examination, which is basically the testing of the evidence. We know that Gachagua has come out fighting part of that evidence. But also I must probably say there isn't much of the content of the 11 charges. Personally, from a legal perspective, nothing much that holds serve for the abuse of office charges and relational charges on account of his public character, public behavior, and the way he's conducted himself and pronounced himself. He may have a defense which he's already put out there, saying shares, for instance, are prescribed already in the Kenya Kwanza agreements with other parties, but that otios, that doesn't hold water on account of the fact that a pre-election agreement is not a post-election agreement. And in fact, a pre-election agreement does not mean you are in the office. When you get into the office, you are calling on public behavior is something different. We had the same argument, I think, of Abi's office in the impeachment for, it was Governor Sonko then, and then we went to the High Court, and there are pronouncements along that line, and the standards set are in place. The impeachment of Gachagua is not anything different from the impeachment in terms of process, content, and the scales of justice as put at the Senate.
So long as there is enough evidence adduced.
Now the other issue is, post that, he has to behave in a certain way. Of course, if he's impeached, and then he can't continue to hold that office or another office. And that's eternity, by the way. He doesn't have a limitation of period until probably he goes to High Court. Number two is if then he is not impeached, he has to rebehave, meaning he has behaved in a manner that's offensive to part of the society. It's not about part of society agreeing with him, it's the entire society agreeing with his leadership and giving him legitimacy to continue to lead. Now, fast forward will be this, that there is this process which is quasi-judicial, meaning it's both political and also judicial. But after this, it will be a legal process where the threshold is very different and is going to be put on the scales. And I will urge him to continue with the process, because I personally would want to test the constitutional provisions so as to see how they serve us, because it's a process that for the first time we are putting into place the checks that are put in the Constitution. So that'll be the High Court that's going to test the waters. Don't be cheated that the High Court cannot intervene. The courts will intervene and can intervene if prompted to or seized of such matters. So they can look at the process. However, it must be cautioned that courts don't interfere with the outcome. They don't. They look at the process, whether the process serves the outcome, meaning therefore, if there's certain procedural
the process
issues,
of the Senate
is the procedural issue. You don't look at what the court doesn't review what the Senate has done or the National Assembly did. No, it looks at the process. So the questions will be probably on public participation, on whether the right to be heard was absolutely executed, because it's inderogable.
Let me get it right for the sake of the viewer. So the courts will interpret all these charges independently? Or will interrogate?
The courts don't hear the charges.
The
court won't hear the charges. They will not hear the charges. They will not pronounce themselves on the charges. What they will do is look at whether the process was held, because remember, courts don't supervise the transaction of Parliament. What it does is look at whether the process as laid out was followed. You put your rules, follow them. You don't follow them, it becomes a breach. And that's why we say procedure is the handmaid of substance. If the substance is available, was reached, for instance, the impeachment, then the process towards the substance must have been followed. So if you put rules on impeachment, the Constitution does, the law does, understanding orders, were they followed in the sanctity? Was it followed to the latter? Meaning, therefore, was the right to be heard, for instance, given to him? There's time. Was the time adequate? Was public participation given adequate time? Were people rushed? For instance, the question I know he's been prompting out there, which I know will be canvassed and must be canvassed, is in question of public participation, why were the questions framed in accusatory manner and not in a responsive manner too? The right to be heard by the people at public participation should have been, Gachagua has done this, he's accused of the following 11 charges. His response is that he did not do this because of the following. What do you make of this? And then you put your answer. You can say, so-and-so is a thief. And then his response is omitted, and you want people to say whether he's a thief or not. I mean, it is impossible. So the statement was accusatory, and the right to be heard in the context of the response that it is then measured in public participation. That vulgarizes the public participation element. As to whether that then compromises the entirety of the hearing is an issue of scales of justice to be put before the court. So it is not over until it's over. If I have to ask Gachagua purely from a legal perspective, I'd like him to continue with this process to the Supreme Court. We continue to test the availability of our laws on all fours. Whether he'll go or not is not the issue. I would want to see a situation where we jurisprudence this and anchor it on law, so that then we know the tools of trade to use. Tomorrow it's going to be someone else, either the governors, and the other day
the precedent should be set clearly.
Remember, the president can be impeached in the same way that Gachagua is being impeached. So we want that process anchored properly in law, and these are the issues that come out. For instance, what is the province and place of public participation in the impeachment process? Do people even need to be heard on this process? And if so, what is the extension? You could allocate one day, and
there is something I'm getting here, Wakili. Then let me just comment. From what Wakili has said, It's like there's a marking scheme already being set, so that in future, as in the case of, the way you usually say,
yes,
as in the case of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, and so which means if the courts will get it right, maybe, you know, the High Court or the Supreme Court, the way he's saying, he's excited and he would like to see the Deputy President going until the Supreme Court. So probably this is a precedent being set, even as far as the future Deputy Presidents or even the Presidents will be. It's going to be a very interesting time ahead.
Well, I think the last time we were on set,
yes,
we had predicted that this was definitely going to set a precedent on how other impeachment motions or presented were definitely going to be handled. I think that we said last time we were here. And probably that is what the legal processes would want probably to test, as Wakili said. That's what we said last time we were on set. Well, I think I would definitely agree. This is both political and legal process. Seems that the Deputy President is not really working on his legal, the political bit of it as well. When it comes to politicizing the impeachment motion. And you realize that it's definitely, it's murky, that some of the charges you could hear the undertones from members of Parliament already charged, guilty as charged, even as he appeared last week. And that even before he placed his defense, he was already, a marked man. He was already accused of certain violations, even before his own defense, by himself at the National Assembly. So that tells you that a more politicized legal process that he was facing as the motion was being tabled, in the National Assembly. But even as it proceeds this week to the Senate, far from being that there is a quasi-judicial processes in that the legal, the scales of justice would want to stand a test, but I think it's also partly importantly to mention out that there are other political consequences that comes with this kind of procedures and impeachment. I stood my ground last year on the set and said very clearly that I think some of these particular grounds are not legal but political. That some of these particular statements remains a roadside declarations. And that is what you saw happening on, on the National Assembly. That's the certain clauses, I'm not clauses, but certain statements you could see that this probably is not something that is impeachable. This remains a political persecution. This remains a political issue, far from being a legal issue. But I think the question that we are looking at, yes, but what are the political consequences that comes with either impeaching or not? Because that is also we need to see. Do we foresee a situation where the legal or political advisors of the Deputy President would ask him to resign, avoid facing of not holding public office, as Wakili here is talking about? So from now, today until Wednesday probably, there are longer days in politics. And probably you might see that the Deputy President would not want, to have a consequences that would have a dire, consequences in his political career throughout. And that could be an option. Yesterday at the service that was attended by the President, he was very firm and said there's some of these issues he needs to pursue along. And partly some of this reform covertly must be done, and he needs to be accorded prayer and support. So I project and I hypothesize that this could be one of the hardest decisions that the executive and the head of executive have to make to pursue this process to a completion. But what happens to the other side of the presidency, who would also want to salvage himself in his political career for the future? So I think this is what we probably project this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a very busy one. Dr. When you look at what's happening in the political segment, of course, perhaps you can say that the Deputy President has seen it, that yes, the Senate, because from the way he was speaking yesterday, that musijali, si tuko tu sawa, si tunajua hii mambo vile tunafanya. So somebody would argue that he's already seen the end right from the beginning, that the Senate is going to act in a certain way. And so, the good praise to the judiciary and all that, we've seen a direction already that he sensed it, that at the end of the day, kotini tunakuja.
I think even from the beginning, we know when I look at a situation, let's talk about the impeachment of the Governor Mwangaza. We really, we are doing new things in this country. Impeaching a deputy president is something that is happening the first time in history.
Yeah.
I don't remember any other time. And what I'm saying, the deputy already lost. He already lost. The time you are just trying to legitimize it, to legalize it. I cannot come up one day and tell you now, the deputy president. Whichever way, the court saves him, whatever happens, something is lost. What is lost? He's lost the seat, and even if he's going to be there, he cannot enjoy what he has been enjoying. The Kenyans will not view him the same way they are viewing him, and then the president will not also view him the same way they have been viewing each other. Whichever way, if you ask me if he could take my advice, which is a bit too late right now, he would just resign. But what again makes me get a bit sensitive about the deputy president is that the allegations and him are still two things. There's a way you try to address issues that were being alleged.
And allegations and him are two different things.
Yeah, I just to,
okay.
I can be accusing you of something, but you are talking about everything except what you are being accused of.
I have a request. We take a break. Then we just pick it from there.
I hope I don't forget.
We will remind you. We will remind you. Let's take a break and take a look at the weather as well as we come back shortly. Stay with us.
Okay. Good luck. I've just remembered what I wanted to say. Yeah. Okay. First, as I was saying, according to me, the writing is on the wall for the deputy president. But I also feel like he was holding some pressure on Monday before that. I think his strategies are all misguided in the sense that he was trying to lure Kenyans into a pity party for 2 hours when he was occupying the screens and saying, I think he was just like, please save me. He's vulnerable. He sounded vulnerable. He sounded defensive. And what I would say, especially in this country of ours, I think we are so dynamic in terms of political decisions and the way we change our mind. But what Mheshimiwa Raila commented on the other day, and then just got me thinking in the sense that, wait a minute, sometimes, there's mob psychology. Sometimes we practice a lot of mob psychology when it comes to politics. Now, the remarks of Mheshimiwa Raila got me to re-evaluate, to even ask myself a few questions, because I believe anything that happens does not happen by chance. I got to re-evaluate, like, why did we say no to the Adani? So right now, I am not for or against. We are not talking about Adani right yet. No, I'm talking about the remarks of Raila that is in...
We are still with the DP, Gachagua trial.
I thought I could mix these two things.
No. I'll come back to that.
I leave this first, I reserve it.
Yes.
So, okay, about the DP, I think the courts may not be at a position to save him, though he's trying. And in case they save him, I think he'd rather not be saved through the court, because he's going to face more humiliation. There's already humiliation in the air. People, so many other Kenyans, he's still at his home turf. He's still at his home turf. I've not heard of him being in Northeastern and trying to talk to Kenyans like, you know what, this is happening, that is happening. So, like I was saying, our deputy president is still distant from addressing the real issues.
Yeah,
and he's still in denial.
The allegations and the deputy president, two different people. The
allegations of the deputy president and him are two people, are two instances, because there are two situations. Him is not, you talk of his tribal way of handling stuff. He has not addressed it. Instead, he like reinforces it. lazima watu wetu wasaidiwe. Sasa tukiwa pale, you know, the things of shares, and then comes out, is on the defense. You know, when you're on defense, it means you're not seeing what the problem is. So that is the annoying part about our deputy president, that he does not see what the complaints are. Forget about all those many other things. The main things of him being tribal. And then that's the time he comes up and reinforces the share thing. When he was talking about America, Mianya, you see, you put those mitagos and they fail. So what are you telling Kenyans? That you're trying to blow hot air continuously and you are not facing the real issues that are actually ousting you. So there's still a problem. He'll be impeached, be out there without knowing his problem. Are you saying? And you see, when you know your problem, I'm sure you can try and be a better person.
Yeah.
So when you try and talk to him, when he was talking about the shares that irritated most Kenyans, so when he talks about shares, and then when he gives the people who are talking about the shares and the divisions, he talks, and then you see other regions are not even involved in that clique, because we are not going to talk about the shares he was talking about. Weta and Mdavadi come from the same region, Western, and then he talks these two, theirs was in written. So it is convincing Kenyans that it was verbal, it was not written. So you know, he's not looking at it properly, like what is really irritating Kenyans about this share thing. And then we are not made of four tribes. This country has 45, is it 45 tribes? But you know, when you tell us Mdavadi and Weta, they have shares. So where are the cases? Where are the Luos? Where are the who? You know, we cannot have a country whereby the winner takes it all. Like now you want to manipulate all other tribes and start telling us. He has not seen the problem that even sitting down the four of them, having to discuss about what shares am I getting, what shares is who getting, still has a problem. He has not seen that. So my prayer is, can he just get to know what's the problem? Then the main thing is tribal thing, the share thing, if he can get to know that.
In as far as this is concerned, again, still on the front page of the Star newspaper, DP race narrows down to Waiguru and Kindiki. DP race now narrows down to Waiguru and Kindiki. The two gentlemen, that is the president and his deputy, were actually on the front page. They were attending church service, different locations. The president was at the AIC Milimani, while the deputy president was at St. Mark's Teachers Training College in Kigari, that is in Manyata, Embu County. And Kirinyaga governor said to be a favorite as president looks to appease Central. That is what I have here on the front page of the Star newspaper. All right, pension billions, auditors uncover financial mess. And KEMRI also tests new kit for easier diagnosis. And finally, MPs lament over 1 million shillings kids out of school in NEP. That is a worrying number. DP race narrows down to Waiguru and Kindiki. Daktari, let me ask you this question. The issue of running mate now is coming up even before the impeachment. What do you think about this?
I think, politics is about perceptions. And already the political perceptions has been executed. Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president, his fate seems to have been sealed. And despite the fact that we still have levels of challenges that he's trying to put his case across, that is the Senate, and finally the judiciary. If you could hear his talk, he seems to have rested his heart of salvation in the court of law. But you see, whether he's going to survive or he's going to be saved or not saved, his position will never be tenable again, in the sense that even if he remains to be the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, he will still be a figurehead. He will not be considered of any value. Because when you look at this, Olo, his fate seems to have been sealed in the process of bringing about what we call the broad-based government. Because when I look at what is bedeviling the deputy president, it is more to do with the past than the present. Because you look at all these utterances, during the time when they were campaigning against the Right Honorable Raila on the other side, and Uhuru Kenyatta, Some of the utterances that Rigathi is making now are the same ones that they were being lauded during those days, because it was sweet by then. They were against the former president, who was actually campaigning for Right Honorable Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
And the same words are now being coined up to remove him in power. So it seems to me that the kind of relationship that Rigathi and former president and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the past is haunting Rigathi. And Ruto seems to be sacrificing his own deputy for the sake of the unity of these other gentlemen who were perceived to have been opposed to him. And that is why I look at it as these were the necessities, these were the prerequisites that were demanded before the broad-based government was actually formed. And as to the issue of who is going to be among the two Mount Kenya stalwarts, Waiguru and Kindiki, whichever way it will go, because the kind of seat that they're being, I don't see it as a reward.
Yeah.
It is only a standoff. Yani, because we have done this just to appease them, let us have one of you. And that is why some of the Mount Kenya politicians, like I saw Kioni, I saw many of them saying that we no longer need these seats, because these seats will serve only to divide Mount Kenya people. Because you hear now Kindiki comes from the west and the east. Those who are, the 69 members of parliament who are in support of Kindiki's, as a deputy president, are the ones who are pushing, and they are already divided. We have now Mount Kenya East, Mount Kenya West, talking the same language. And then we also have Waiguru here. If Waiguru will come in, of course, he will also represent the upper hand, the other side of the Mount Kenya people. So in this case, the reward will serve a division. And that is why they are saying we don't need this position. But of course, it is worth rewarding, because this is a political process. It is worth rewarding them. Whether they give to Waiguru or they give to Kindiki, they will still score a divided vote in Mount Kenya come the next election.
But then, Dr. again, you talked about rewarding, but then again, the position of the deputy president is constitutional. Whether it goes to Turkana, whether it goes to whichever part of the country, that position must be filled as per the requirement of the Constitution.
As far as the legal, if you ask my brother, he would give you a legal position, but I'm taking a political position.
Yes.
Because whatever investment that this government is doing, it's a political investment.
I agree.
So a political investment in the sense that they are looking at Mount Kenya's vote bank come the 2027 election.
What would be the risk? This goes to all of you. What would be the risk if the president picked somebody else from another region, apart from central Kenya? Now that the star is narrowing down to Waiguru and Kindiki, I don't know how this poll was conducted.
When you listen, across the utterances of the members of parliament, especially those from the South Rift or North Rift, or the Rift Valley in general, they are saying your person, another person from the same region shall be given. What informed this mind that another person from that region?
That is my question. That's my question.
No, what is there, my brother? I'm telling you, this is a political kind of direction that we are actually undertaking. Legally, deputy president can be, co-opted from anywhere in the Republic of Kenya, so long as the person is suitable. Somebody who is actually patriotic, Kenyan. You have a Kenyan mind. It needs know-how. Something that has also been accused of in the right. Rigathi Gachagua, that is all is more tribal or whichever way. But while Rigathi Gachagua was campaigning for Ruto, he was not tribal. Now he's tribal. That is his services are no longer required.
Let me get it for you, Wakili. The doctor is raising some salient position there. That yes, I know you must have numbers and you must have money, you must have clout, you must have influence, you must have more so influence when it comes to leadership. When you go back to your backyard, how are you going to influence people to rally behind you? And Mount Kenya is quite pivotal in an electoral cycle in the history, and we all know this. But what will the danger of the president picking somebody else? Apart from the two gentlemen, from the two candidates who are already being fronted by the Star newspaper, what will the danger of, should it go, all right, that he's impeached and he's out of office? What will the danger of picking somebody either from Mijikenda, Giriama, go to my home turf? What will the danger?
Well, politics serves a different platform from legal issues. Politics is about numbers. There is nobody who goes to occupy a political position through an election who won't muster the numbers that are needed or pronounced to have mustered the numbers. More importantly is that those numbers are represented in many facets, but more importantly here we have the divisive element that from those divisions you bring the divisions together to harness the numbers. What I mean is the folly of democracy would be, if you call it that way, that we divide ourselves into certain fiefdoms, which fiefdoms then have to congregate for purposes of a certain bias, whose sum total produces a winner. Having said that, it means therefore that these fiefdoms must have a pattern. You must divide the fiefdoms into patterns. So it could be Muslims, Christian, and other counties in this country that have Muslims and Christians, and therefore a Christian taps into the Muslims and Muslims taps into Christians. But the most dominant feature of these fiefdoms in this country is ethnicity. There are ethnic blocks that are bigger than others, with more people than others. Those are more attractive in politics than those that don't have people. If you get the Ogeks and Kikuyus, I mean, you will have to go for the Kikuyus for purposes of numbers. So that's why it's a political, the people are the political tools of trade in politics. So you have to get them more that are in a certain fiefdom, and this is ethnicity. That's why you get ethnicity as the dominant issue of playing politics in this country. In other places, we have the Caucasians, we have the whites, we have the black Americans, we have this as is playing out now in the US in the elections that are going to have. But here we have ethnicity, and there's nothing wrong with being divided in ethnicity, because that's a pattern that we found ourselves in anyway. Now, why that, and it's not religion, thank God. We look at ethnicity. So there's Somali here, there's the Kikuyu here, and why the dominance of the Mount Kenya right now is because the position is being held by a person from Mount Kenya. Meaning, therefore, even in politics, we donate our chieftains to represent us on the table. That person went there as an individual serving as deputy president, and he makes the mistakes or no mistakes, or depending on what comes out, as an individual. But you see, foremost, he went there with an identity of the ethnicity. Meaning, therefore, even in politics, the first in time to be considered is ethnicity as opposed to even the person. So when you are probably thinking of 2027...
That's in relation to the Kenyan context?
Yes, the Kenyan context.
Okay.
So in 2027, you will say the Luyas are probably pro-ODM, Kikuyus are pro-this, and so on and so forth. So you play your math towards the congregate of numbers. Now, then that tribe donates, either by default or deliberately, donates a personality. So we say Luyas are represented by Mudavadi, and then there's Wetangula there, and so on and so forth. That's why, even in the negotiation of the pre-coalition agreement, there is a political party involved, because that's what the law says, but in a sense, that political party, again, summons an ethnicity behind it, such that if it is Ford Kenya, the ethnicity is prescribed behind the name Ford Kenya. If it is Jubilee, there's an ethnicity prescribed, and so on and so forth. Suffice it to say, therefore, why Mount Kenya continues to be the constant and dominant ethnicity related or relational to the DP position is because of the negotiation then. Fast forward to putting into place a government and what is going on. Therefore, it makes sense for people and pundits to say, therefore, that the deputy presidents will still be in the personality of Kindiki and Waiguru, not because of who they are per se. It is because they represent the ethnicity that contributed the deputy presidency as at the time of the election.
Let me bring in Daniel here. Dan, based on what Wakili said, which is well put, well explained, but when you look at the numbers, we all agreed numbers and negotiation, what you bring on the table, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what would be the biggest risk, or either to change the political landscape in this country, all factors remaining constant, of course, but you pick somebody from the minority. If you have a vision of changing the political dynamics and direction the country would take, go to the least or the smallest tribe in this country and pick your deputy from there.
That would be a political suicide. even as the context that Wakili has just mentioned, we are thriving in having mass number of voters, congregating them at around ethnic blocks. That's why you hear the political scientists like Mutai Ngunyi talking about the supremacy of the tyranny of numbers. The decision that you have to make because of the larger voting basket that you come from and the huge following that you have. The currency that makes you relevant in the political scene is how much you are able to bring compacted votes together. This is why it's difficult to rule out people like Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga out of politics, even as much as sometimes they run unsuccessfully.
Why?
Towards a presidential, because of the compact they have, the following they have, what they bring on the table. And I think that is what really defines what politics, and it's not only in Kenya. We have seen it all over the region. I mean, you're seeing the struggle that Republicans and Democrats are having right now. When it regards to how many states are you able to mobilize and turn blue to, to red or turn red to blue. It's all about how many are you bringing on numbers. If you don't have resources, then you must bring numbers on the table. However, that said, ideally, and it was our political vision that we have, that we must have an issue-based politics, though ideal as it sounds. But sometimes we are not able to reach out there because what then would we get out of coming to ideal? That is what you're asking. How then would a president nominate a deputy from a minority group? The question is, as ideal as it sounds, for example, bringing on the Ogiek deputy president as a running mate, that's fine. But then what is the political consequences you bear of going to the ballot and not getting the actual votes compared to someone who chooses a deputy from a majority, ethnic, that comes with?
Would it change the perception? Would it change the perception from Kenyans?
Yes, it would
and how
change perception,
they vote?
ideally, but realistically, every politician's the ultimate, whatever people ultimately put yourself on the ballot is to win, and not to craft a narrative of idealism. That comes. What is the priority that a candidate puts, prioritize? Is it coming out fancy and coming out as one who wants to look more affirmative, or actually running and winning the seat? So these are things that you personally have to sacrifice, Olo. Remember one of the mistakes that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga did and supposedly did on the Mao issue. Do you remember that issue? When he said that in the sake of restoring, environment, I will be able and willing to sacrifice my political ambition to save Mao. He sacrificed his political ambition. And you saw what led into that. So learning out of that kind of thing, you wouldn't want to sacrifice your political ambition for idealism, even though that is what we should be envisioning as we move forward. But again, coming to the issue about Mount Kenya, the political hegemony around central Kenya, I think it also stands a test of time. Even as much as we want to put our legal processes in terms of impeachment, but one of the political tests that we also want to put is the question of central Kenya in the political scene right now. Is there a possibility, for example, putting a question to a hypothesis, can we hypothesize, for example, that we can get a presidential candidate or a running mate somewhere that is not from central Kenya and still win? That is a question realistically that we are asking on the table.
Yes.
Because the probability that William Ruto is asking himself right now is, what happens if Mudavadi becomes, for example, a proposed deputy president to replace Gachagua? Should he be impeached? What happens if, for example, he chooses somebody like Honorable Mungatana? What happens if he chooses somebody, for example, like,
or even Wakili or Daktari?
Yeah, even
where's the danger?
So those are political questions that, every political candidate is gambling with.
I get it.
In the process of becoming ideal as a politician.
Yes.
But the question is Mount Kenya finding themselves, after a very long time, that there is no probable a political kingpin that is so strong out of the image of Uhuru Kenyatta?
Okay.
Question one. Question two is can they be able to unite, even if they are not within the presidency of the ruling coalition? That is question two. Question three is how long can they be able to sustain getting out of power and getting out of politics? That brings in the question of, why is the toying with reaching out to Kalonzo? For example, making a coalition with him, reaching out to the leader of DAP, who is Honorable Amalwa. The question is, would they take a political risk And that's why you see the bitterness around why are we even being intimidated to follow Honorable Rigathi Gachagua. Can we remain with the president, even in the face of impeachment, and still say we are in Kenya Kwanza government and we are differing with the supportedly political ping-ping of Central Kenya, who is Rigathi Gachagua? There is another question. You know,
you know, there's something you said, and it means when you talk about numbers, the perception, and even picking somebody from the minority to change the political landscape, and some people would prefer either picking this in a classic example of people would say President Uhuru Kenyatta picked technocrats in his government as opposed to having politicians, or you can have a mixture of both. But in this case, you're talking about numbers to win.
Yes.
So we are negating the effect of performance. So what if the president says, I want performance, I don't want a politician, I want somebody who's going to deliver. When it comes to presidential function, you only take a minute, invite the president, and that's it. Dr. Again, I'm afraid the guillotine is going to fall on you.
For the break.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Okay, disclaimer.
Okay.
Okay.
But it's all right if we are taking a break. I have no problem with that. But the minute you tell me about a break, you mix me up a bit.
Okay.
Now, what I was trying to say, you know, when we are talking about Mount Kenya, you know what happens that, you know, since independence, if the president is not Kalenjin, and then the president is a Kikuyu, then the deputy president is a Kalenjin. You know, there is this between these two tribes, and then we are talking about numbers. I'm thinking this time round, because Mount Kenya was midway, the seat was with them. My idea is, right now they're already divided east and west. You know, you can have the numbers, but you don't speak the same language. You look at Luo Nyanza. You know, you ask them immediately. You know that it has also exposed to them, like the gaps they are beginning to have that they didn't have before. You know, you can say people have numbers. You know, even Kisii and Nyamira County combined, we have the numbers. But what is our voting pattern? What is our voting mannerism? That is a place whereby everybody, even Wajakoya got his votes. You know, everybody gets his votes. But what has been the mannerism of Mount Kenya? It has been, it's like a one basket thing. You know, like they have a jury jacket thing that they decide this is what we are doing, and they do it. So what Mount Kenya is not realizing it, they have affected what really gave them opportunities in the mainstream of politics. So what does that mean? When they start becoming east and west, what does that mean? That is that vote no longer is going to make too much sense. So even as they fight, they have to see that is a division. You know, you go to Luo Nyanza. Let's say, for example, they were looking for the deputy president. Let's say it was a Luo who was a deputy president. Look at it like that from the Western. They will not go, it's this one, it's that one, it's this one or this one. It means they still have a problem. They do not have a kingpin. You know, automatically it was supposed to come out like, this is the one who's going to be the deputy president. But they still have a problem. And what am I saying? Let whoever they want to choose from Mount Kenya, but the next subsequent other times, my prayer is, can we change? Can we change from two tribes? Because I don't think that we can continue talking about numbers. We can change about our mannerism, our pattern of other regions. Please, we need the change of time so that we can also feel a bit inclusive in the leadership, in the main leadership of the country.
Now I'm not going to cut you. You've done well.
Thank you.
Let's take a break. With the weather, of course. We'll break now. Okay, welcome back. So, Dr. let's come back and circle back to this. So, it's going to be a very busy week, of course, for the Senate. Of course, I don't know what's your perception and what is your projection that is going to be. Senate is going to be a very busy house starting today until the end of the week. But the hallmark is going to be for that one of the deputy president. He's to the making, and again, we are here. And we are just seeing right before our eyes, whichever way it will go. Allow me to ask you, what do you think is running through the minds of the senators, and more so the speaker?
Although I think the remark of His Excellency, the Deputy President, during the church service in Embu, if it is anything to go by, I think he seems to be realizing, or rather, the reality is really dawning on him that any eventuality can be. Because when he asked the Mount Kenya people that, and the Kenyans at large, that we must remain united, even in the midst of all this confusion that we are facing as a country, we must remain as one. And this call, Olo, reminds me what he also said, that even if the worst befalls on me, that is what Kachagwa was saying, you Mount Kenya people must remain united.
Yeah.
You know what Ruto, His Excellency the President, has been able to do. I think he has won in dividing Mount Kenya into two groups, having the Mount Kenya West and East as a block, and then also having also the other side. And that is why he's trying to salvage by giving back the seat in other persons, apart from His Excellency the Deputy President. And I think Rigathi Gachagua has known his fate, because behind the scene arrangement, you can see tall people in the persons of Right Honorable Raila Odinga, His Excellency the President. You can talk about the unseen and unfelt presence of the former President, Uhuru Kenyatta, in the whole scenario. So the rate of survival is almost nil. And then again, when you look at the Senate law, what do we expect in a Senate which is playing politics? Now, you expect anybody in his rightful self. In fact, when I saw the Minister of Energy explaining about the done deal of the Ketraco and Adani, I realized that Right Honorable Raila must be behind the whole thing, because these guys cannot do anything away from consulting from His Excellency, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. So in this case, even in the Senate, I am not expecting anything saving the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, because the people who are there are representatives of these parties. Yeah. And I don't foresee his survival there. The only place that he's banking on is actually the court of law, which of course the court of law can rule either in favor or against Rigathi Gachagua, depending also on the substance of the evidence that he's going to lay down before the court. But in the whole scenario, whether he wins or he doesn't win, he may not become anybody in the future politics. But one thing that stands before my mind, Olo, the gentleman is going to make huge spoils against His Excellency the President, Ruto, as far as the politics is concerned. Ruto may not actually see that this thing is now a done case by having Rigathi out of the politics, but I can tell you for sure the political impacts that will come after this scenario is not going to be a short-term thing. You know, we are talking about Rigathi, who is a politician, who was an administrator, a die-hard Mount Kenya stalwart, patriot of his own people. So in this case, political future of the presence of Ruto in Mount Kenya is also under risk, in the sense that Rigathi may not allow that thing to happen, to realize. Because, and not only that, we must also realize that we have a third force, which is actually the Gen Zs. And the discouraged lot among the Kenyans who are now watching, wondering why His Excellency the President could be doing things behind the scene. Behind the scene in the sense that they are talking about the Adani deal, which was actually kept in the dark until the other day when we are now being approached that this deal has been done, like the Ketraco one. So in this case, how many other things shall be done behind the scene? And how many Kenyans will say, yes, let us move on this way? I think, looking by the way things are, this country is ripe for revolution. And listening to the tones, the undertones among the ordinary Kenyans, Kenyans are discouraged. Kenyans are a down-throated load. And even issues that would have benefited them, issues to do with NHIF, shifting from the NHIF to Shiva, it was a problem. They did the transition without making real impact on the other side. Unapata mtu analia, I've gone to the hospital, I was told that this thing is not responding. I don't know I mean, the money is not there. It has been done, it has been transferred. So now you are neither in NHIF or you are not even in the Shiva. So this confusion has clouded this administration, which of course they must come out very strongly and maybe do the correction, because it is painting the government in a very bad position. Having this transferred, unapata mtu analia, or he's gone for the kidney, whatever, this dialysis.
Yeah.
And he's told you cannot access to this medication because of the cost implication that the NHIF is no longer with you. And then the new whatever, the new discovered, the Shiva, is not even with you. So I mean, leaving people in a very destructive manner. So in this case, I think the future of the political cloud that Ruto is enjoying, it is highly at risk.
Okay. When you look at the Standard, again, we've just talked about the president either going from whichever direction that he'll have to pick his deputy president. And the Standard says it's the two-horse race. Guess who? Kindiki and Mudavadi, a favorite for deputy president. This is on the front, this is on page 4 of the Standard newspaper. And I've just asked a question, what if the president goes or faces another direction apart from the mountain? So we have got Kindiki, and now another name appears, Mudavadi. Of course, now when Mudavadi comes in, we have got the lawyer numbers. But we all know the lawyer unit.
I think, let me interject.
Take a break. Take a break. Let me come with Wakili. Take a break. Let me come with Wakili. When you look at the numbers, the lawyer unity has been there for a very long time. The last election, the larger Western Kenya, Bungoma voted overwhelmingly for the Kenya Kwanza. Vihiga, Kakamega, Trans Nzoia, talk to Busia County and all that, voted in favor of ODM or Azimio for that matter. How will Mudavadi, now that his name is also being fronted in the corridors of Kenya Kwanza, change that? Can it really work now that the lawyer also have numbers, of course?
Well, first let me pitch that response from my perception that this whole problem stems from the Gen Z protests. It's a carryover of that problem, for the reason that if the Gen Zs had not protested, Gachagua would not have behaved in the manner that broke the camel's back, as in to make pronouncements which are part of the accusation before the National Assembly and the Senate on his statements against Haji, the accusation that he sponsored or he had a romance towards the proximity to either funding or sympathy to the protests, and that in the protest his character to undermine the president probably was more pronounced. So apart from the cabinet having gone and the changes that came from those protests, I think he becomes probably collateral damage or a victim of those protests. Now, why I'm connecting that to the response is this. Today, the opposition to the second term of President Ruto is not with the politicians, it is with the Gen Zs. How he manages that environment becomes more important, because if the Gen Zs, who most of them, as we know, because they live with us, were not registered voters, and they register en masse as voters, but they take a political position that is not in sync with the projections of President Ruto in terms of the numbers he's trying to create, that messes up everything. The reason is that their numbers may not necessarily be influenced by conventional politics in this country of this is a Luya, this is a Kikuyu, and where do I go, the mountain, and that may become an irrelevant consideration in the next elections if the Gen Zs have their way in terms of putting in numbers and voting. The reason is, I don't think there is proper, really opposition in this country as we speak, having removed Raila Odinga. That space for opposition has been a character domain of, and the play field of Raila Odinga. Having organized himself in the manner as we have seen and is playing out in terms of moving to the AU or the candidature there, and even his recent pronouncement in terms of even in the protest of the country, because we have what we call a national psych on for against something. The national psych against Adani's deal is such that it's questionable, and therefore it doesn't sit well with the people. and I'm talking of national psyche in terms of the thinking of the entire public and what the public will regard that.
Yeah.
Now, why I say so is because then opposition seems not to be at its highest in terms of exercising its oversight for the people to government, against government. And who do we leave in opposition, therefore? We have the voices, miffed voices of Kalonzo Musyoka and the build-up of probably a coalition of sorts of opposition members who I think cannot replace Raila Odinga's measure of play of position. So having said that, therefore, the only people who are silent and will probably upset the smooth flow into 2027 will be the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs, therefore, are not necessarily with Rigathi Gachagua, but they are a protest vote, which can upset, and they're in their millions. They are a protest vote, which, if not taken care of, for instance, if they're not registered, if you make sure they're not registered, then you can play your politics of Mlima versus Western. Number two, the experiment have been done in this country, has been done in this sense. I think Mwai Kibaki played with Western. He stayed with Western in terms of deputy presidency, and he succeeded. But remember, he comes from Mlima himself.
Yeah.
Here we have a candidate from somewhere else. Probably in terms of the numbers, the ethnic numbers are closer to what Mlima would provide in terms of the political contribution. But he doesn't have Mlima and he goes for Western.
But can that change right now? Because way back then the political landscape was
different.
A bit different.
I agree with you.
When
it was
he
different.
Picked Mudia Wori.
It was different. And he picked Mudia Wori.
Yes.
First it was Kijana Wamalwa. Then Mudia Wori. Now, when Kijana Wamalwa died, Mudia Wori replaced him. Ethnicity played hand there. He didn't pick from somewhere else. Because of something we call legitimate expectation. Legitimate expectation is where by conduct or by words you promise someone, and therefore the person then has a legitimate expectation that you are going to remain constant in your behavior. Why we discuss Mlima even now is that there has been created a legitimate expectation that because that position comes from the ethnicity of Mlima, is going to remain with Mlima. Legitimate expectation in politics is like an unwritten contract where we have an agreement with you by conduct because you appointed somebody from a certain place.
Yes.
And therefore you remain constant in that appointment through replacement of the same ethnicity for the reason that it's legitimately so expected.
Okay.
So legitimate expectation can therefore upset the politics of
and this
the
one
side.
comes from the Wanjiku.
Yes.
All right. So Dan, based on, again, I want to get to your point on this one. So Honorable Mudavadi's name is also appearing on this list. Does this really change something?
Well,
the excitement?
Well, I would have proposed that ideally the president tries his hand between the period of now and 2026, 2027 to see how the dynamics plays when he's able to nominate, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi and invite him as the deputy president. And I think he could experiment that to see if really that would change the dynamics come 2027 and post or not. But just like I said and Kithi has confirmed, is the most important thing is, politics being local and contextual in this country.
Yes.
That the more you become politically relevant, if you're able to consolidate a voting basket and make them intact as possible. Because, like I said, there is no any other currency. We haven't matured as a democracy in this country to a level where we recognize that we can vote ideally. Like we can vote Victor Olo because Olo is ideal. And Olo embraces the value as stipulated in Article 10. So we are aspiring to reach at that level, and we are yet to reach at that level, given the fact that there is fractured voting system. And, Wakili has just mentioned the new dynamic of a voting bloc that we are seeing, a voting constituency of the young people in Gen Z, represented in Gen Z.
He's also emerging.
Who really wants to believe on idealism of a nation, who really want to look at what is the embodiment of a political system that can deliver as opposed to the one that is constituted out of ethnicity or out of other dynamic political interests. That comes a test of time. And then you could see that really coming out even from the organization of the protest, trying to exploit, both digital tools, both every political tools, to make a statement that they appear to be leaderless and they appear to be all those less things. That had been embodied before, like, an established political system or a political class. But although politics, there is nothing in politics that occur just like that. I see everything is planned. Remember, the ODM in press statement said, we want the introduction of NADCO report. You heard that being mentioned in the press.
Yes, over the weekend.
All right?
Yeah.
What could that spell out on these political dynamics? What was that NADCO report about? It was probably looking at how then would we incorporate. It is more of a reflection of a BBI report that looked at how then would we expand some political positions. Remember, it was the advent of this report. That is where there was a beginning of the deputy president and president falling out because of the pressed needs of, the protests that were coming out led by ODM and Raila. That was led to the reconstitution of the NADCO report. It was called the bipartisan, and then it came to a NADCO committee that came out with a report. So look at the implementation of that report. What was the report talking about in terms of bringing a broad-based, whether it's a broad-based government, whether it's a bread-based government, I don't know what it is, but expanding and accommodating more people. Could that be, a script that is coming in, and we are going to see it after the impeachment motion? Another issue that came out this week is about the reconstitution of IEBC. There's a lot of things that are happening around, and would that spell out that there needs to be something that IEBC needs to be overlooked, or needs to, to midwife post the impeachment? Probably. There's a discussion around the president extending his term limit and executives and governors and all these things. So there is a whole lot of a political discussion that we might be speaking about in the next months that is probably going to shape a political scene post this impeachment. This one is a test on other bigger things that are coming. I foresee that coming ahead.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Evelyn, a quick question. The Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi has been a deputy president, a very short stint. Now, given time and space to perform fully, do you think he can perform?
I
Based
believe
on
so.
the history and his political stand, of course.
I believe, and that time I think it was a bit too short to make out for or against decision. It was such a small, there's a way you have an opportunity to execute something and then the time is not long enough for people to say, I just can't remember even very well what happened because I think about that time we're about to go to
like
another election.
Was it like 2 months or something?
Yeah. Before you even get the orientation, you don't just come in and start working. I think it was just there on paper. It was not there like, this is the deputy president and the staff. And I don't think we have anything to count on about that. If he's going to be given this chance is when we can get to know, because we have almost 3 years to go to another election. So that's the time we can determine that what type of deputy president is going to be.
Yeah.
But and again, it is going to be, the Mount Kenya is going to rebel. There's going to be a lot of rebellion because like we said, the voting pattern depends on like the numbers and your voting. The Mount Kenya, they've been very united until the other day when the impeachment motion came up for the deputy president who comes from there. Ideally, for us to, of course, I would say we should move towards of the Gen Z like utterances of tribalists and stuff. And you see most of these Gen Zs, they don't actually even communicate in their own native language. So that type of a Kenya is going to be very peaceful than what we have right now. But for now, we have to deal with what we have, whereby it is going to be very rebellious for the president, but he still remains the boss to make that decision that who he would like to appoint to the seat. And I believe he also, he is not, I believe the president will not just wake up and see, he has to see what is the political temperatures of the people, because I'm sure if we are impeaching the deputy president to come in with a new one, It is because we want to restore peace. We want to be in a position of addressing now our issues. You know, this impeachment, you know, like now from the impeachment motion time, so those are like 2 months wasted in there. We are not addressing pertinent issues that are affecting Kenyans day to day. So I believe if he's going to make that decision, let it not be a loud one.
Right.
Let it not make us get into more qualms, because we are looking at what can we do with the rest of the years, because looks like the first 2 are already wasted. And all we are doing is addressing what the problems are, talking about the problems. We are not talking about the possible solutions to these problems that the country is facing. And Kenyans are looking for that opportunity. That when are we going to start solving the issues in the Ministry of Health? When are we going to start solving the issues in the Ministry of Education? When are we going to talk actually of our economy today? Why is the shilling losing value by day? You know, we are not yet there, and we are walking towards another election. So I'm sure all Kenyans are looking up. When are we going to talk about the joblessness in this country? How can it be fixed? How can the Gen Zs get something to do? So we are yet on the baking part. You know, you want to come up with a cake every time. You want to change the ingredients. You know, you still don't have the cake. So you are taking too much time to fix the cake, but we are not yet there in fixing these issues, and for them to even do to Kenyans what they said. Look at what we are facing in the Ministry of Health today. You know, it's affecting the common mwananchi so much. So I'm thinking the president should be in a position to fix this thing once and for all, so that we can get into the development mark, not always addressing issues, one issue after another. You know, that's my humble prayer.
Okay, when it comes to making of the cake, I don't know what Daniel would do. Daniel would put a lot of yeast and baking powder.
And you realize you don't need it anyway.
A lot of yeast and baking powder. We will not even taste that cake. Actually, I want to give you 1 minute so that we got to something else as we wind up. Again, yes, go ahead.
I think, although my own observation, and a critical one, although it may sound actually weird, but this is the position. I think Right Honorable Raila Odinga has helped Ruto to demolish his own house. I think that is the position I'm just seeing. Why I'm saying this is, you know, let me explain, because
explain to us
why I'm saying so. You know, in the presence of the ODM as a party, you know, when you look at the ODM joining in the so-called broad-based government or law, you realize that Joho, who is from the other side of the world, Mombasa, Obaranya, Western, so he came as a party. And now the proposal that is being torn in a low tone of having Mudavadi as the possible deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. You see, when I look at Wetangula, when I look at Mudavadi, when I look at all these people, they were emerging. These were considered as rebels of the ODM. Now that they all come up together, those who are making half of the Ruto's government are actually ODM, even Mudavadi and Wetangula included. So in this case, I mean, just get it that way. So in the event, why I'm saying that Right Honorable Raila Odinga has helped Ruto to demolish his own house is that Mount Kenya now is scattered. We may not be sure of it, their vote come 2007, when the next election will come, whether they will be with us or not. It means that we shall never get them intact the way we found them. So we may not be very sure about their position come the next election. And as it is now, Raila holds the key to the 2007 election results. He knows the winner. And he is holding Ruto. I mean, I'm telling you the truth. Why I'm saying this, Raila now is the one who calls the shot in this government. And some people were actually arguing that in the event that Raila, for the possible people who are being seen to be able to save Rigathi, are 3 people: Uhuru Kenyatta, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and maybe Ruto himself. But all these guys are out. So this guy is going to be impeached in all these areas. But one thing I'm very sure of, Ruto, His Excellency the President, must put his house in order. And you should know that Raila, as at now, has been the president for the last 3 decades. When he joined Daniel Moi, the late president of the Republic of Kenya, and then he joined also Kibaki, and then now he joined Uhuru Kenyatta. Now he's with Ruto. He is the longest serving president of the Republic of Kenya, per se, because he has been in all these governments. And going into the future, I'm seeing him determining the political terrain come 2007. So in this case, the case is already decided.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. I want us to get into this. So,
Can I comment something? We can't leave it like that, in the sense that...
I wanted to go to something else.
I know you want to go to something else, but I also want to take this as Dr. Just you need to consider this, that...
Dr. Why did you bring
that is your opinion. Why
did you bring Raila's name in this discussion? I asked about Mudavadi and 2027.
He has brought it up, but you didn't stop him. You stopped me the first time I was trying to bring him in. So I'm not understanding that part, but it's all right. I want to live with it.
Okay, go ahead.
But what I'm trying to ask him, that is a very strong... according to me, I want Daktari to feel that that is per se, that is your opinion about what you have said.
Yes,
It
true.
is your opinion,
True.
and we want to look at it as a... But your opinion has got a bit of biases in it, because you seem to have already a formed opinion about especially Raila, and you seem to be convinced, when you come out and say he has come in to help the president disrupt the government. I think to demolish his own house, I think that's a bit biased. That's a bit biased, and you cannot firmly say that, because that would sound a bit so judgmental, in the sense that you have not given him his space. You've just condemned him, and I don't think that should be the case. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about the president is not a young man. He's somebody who has been in politics, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing. So we cannot say that him is sitting there for somebody to come and spoil the government, because ideally he's the one who was voted as the president. So I found that a bit biased and a bit insensitive, and I'm wishing if you can just revise that.
Doctor, you're ghost getting from your fellow doctor. Can you revise that? So this is a battle of the doctors then. Wakili, keep quiet. Dan, keep quiet.
Let me tell you alone. I'm giving my political analysis of the future, political direction of this country. And as it is now, it is properly shaped by Right Honorable Raila Odinga. That is not, a wayward kind of information. It is also what you can read.
Okay.
Do you need any information or read history?
According to Daktari, Raila is the problem of this country. In short,
summarizing it up. That is not my case. What I'm saying,
when you say he comes to spoil the house of
the key person who is now giving political direction of this country is none other than Right Honorable Raila Odinga.
I don't think you have the facts.
That's a political position.
I do not think you have the facts.
Do you think that statement is entirely true?
It is,
Raila Odinga is not the president.
Raila is not the president.
Raila Odinga is not the deputy president.
And you should ask yourself,
the opposition leader.
If a president can listen to Raila, and then who is Raila? He should inform you that he's not just a pushover. He's not somebody you can just place here and condemn. He's not somebody that you'll stay here and they say he's the problem and get away with it.
Or probably what Dr. is trying to say.
I am not saying he is the problem. I'm giving you my analytical future politics of this country. Yes. I'm not giving Raila as a problem.
Somebody to spoil a country is a problem.
No, what I'm saying
is not a blessing.
Let me tell you, the government that we have in place is a UDA government. Get it from me.
No, it's not UDA.
It is not UDA.
It's broad-based.
Tuseme Kenya Kwanza.
No, it's broad-based.
But Tuseme Kenya Kwanza, let me agree with you. But was ODM inside until we came up with the broad-based government?
But you're so annoyed with that fact.
I'm telling you, I'm taking a position of the political future of this country.
Now why I differ with Dr. Rotich, always, every time. You see, this kind of perception that a country is formed, a government is formed, and the entirety, they are the only people who deserves to be in that kind of government. Dr. Rotich, covertly, you are advancing the theory of Rigathi Gachagua that says that this government has shares. That is exactly what you are covertly advancing to say here. Now, when we are going to deal with this, we are looking at the situation where the President of the Republic of Kenya was not coerced to reach out to other communities in his wisdom. So there is importance to include other political players. I'm just saying what he has mentioned and what is ideal for this country. By the fact that the formation of a government and the misdoing of the constitution we have is by the fact that the winner takes it all, that we have been trying to correct. That in this sense, if a majority coalesce around a candidate and forms a government of the day, then it means that those ethnic communities that coalescing around forms a hedge around the function of that government. Hence, the issue about who was given this share. Who was given this share? And this is what we are trying to avoid in saying that once a government is formed, there's a probability of the candidate of the government of the day reaching out and saying that I am falling short of certain qualities that we need to run this government. We can't have an antagonistic politics each and every time.
Okay.
While we acknowledge the opposition as a place to hold the government accountable, we also acknowledge that the government in entirety needs to reach out to other people and form a government that has a national image. That thing which Akina Rotich is detesting, do not want to see happening in this country. We must call it how it is.
We need,
in this panel,
we need a vibrant opposition.
I think that is right. Yeah. Let me tell you this. If you look at it, because the component of what he has said is the place of Raila Odinga in this government, as to whether he has helped Ruto destroy his own, I think the place was already destroyed. All right?
Yes.
On account of the protests. There was no other way this country was going to be fixed without compromising on the cabinet. But the gap that was left there was left by the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs did not move forward to propose what needs to be done after people had been removed from cabinet, dissolution of cabinet. They remained to say they're leaderless, they're fearless, and all that. There was a gap that needed to be filled. And of course, nature abhors a vacuum. And Raila Odinga then was reached out in the emotionalized environment that we were in, because the president was probably at a situation where he had to appease and be responsive, to be responsive. Broad-based government, therefore, was a response to a situation the president had to fix. And he had to fix it through Raila Odinga. So Raila Odinga came in to help the president and the country, which is true. Whether Raila Odinga then was de facto the president, no. He was not the de facto president, he was not the de jure president in law and in fact, for the reason that he has always played the opposition but in government. So Raila Odinga has been an opposition leader in government throughout. So he remains in position a bit for a few months, something comes up, and then he helps the president of the time to fix whatever needs to be fixed. And therefore, like Sudan, we have SPLO and SPLO in government, IO. We have then opposition, Raila Odinga being in opposition but in government, so opposition leader in government. Probably that's the identity that he gets. As to whether he spoils for the president, I think the president spoils for himself at every constant, whether it is Raila, it is Uhuru, or whatever, because of the manner in which his handlers pronounce themselves. Remember, the problem with Ruto was not probably himself. Probably it was the cabinet that was being impeached throughout through the pronouncements and reaction of the people. So eventually, therefore, I think he has done a good thing to join government for stability that we enjoy today. Others will be walking in these streets because there will be protests, and we can't sustain protests for months and months in this country. Where we are, therefore, fast forward is we have a problem then that has been carried forward. The situational element there and the implication will be Rigathi Gachagua is therefore a victim of the same protest. He then his fight with Ruto is a fight with Raila Odinga, because Raila Odinga came and took the space that he was enjoying at that time. In his kamadari, his pronouncement and everything, he therefore is fighting Raila Odinga. The fight therefore is against Ruto, against Raila Odinga, and probably, I'm using the word probably deliberately, and probably against Uhuru Kenyatta. Because Uhuru Kenyatta cannot be a silent player in this. He must be consulting. And it was said by Raila Odinga that Raila Odinga was consulted by Uhuru Kenyatta whether or not to reach out to fix issues with Ruto. So there could be three people against Rigathi Gachagua. Rigathi Gachagua fate is sealed. Not by parliament, right? By the politicians that are ruling this country.
Hello, I'm vindicated.
No. It's valid. The opinion is valid.
The opinion is valid. It's your opinion, Daktari. Nobody is disputing that. That's why we are all here, so that we can give a valid opinion. But then now, gentlemen and lady, we are winding up. The D-Day for Governor Mutai for Kericho County, of course, that is 31 out of 47 members of the county assembly impeached him, and so The sitting starts this morning at 9 a.m. We are soon going there to the Senate. And of course, he's going to face accusers, matters, gross misconduct, etc., based on that. But in 1 minute each, because of time, again, ODM made some changes in the leadership. Again, something we can say that probably Raila Odinga is slowly reorganizing his house. The Central Committee made some proposals and some changes were made in Mombasa over the weekend. How that is going to change the face of ODM as a party is also an interesting development in that particular party. But then now, Wakili, in 1 minute, if you can, D-Day for governor, again, there's nothing new. What can be changed in as far as the laws are concerned? Because he's going to be, Senate is going to do its bit. But again, somebody will say, as the deputy president, he's also going to go to court. But we've seen this happening over Wambora. Governor Wambora survived the impeachments until he did 10 years. Again, Governor Kawero Mwangaza the same, apart from Governor Sonko and Governor Waititu, who ultimately were edged out of office. But then, do you think something can be changed in the law so that once you're impeached by the Senate, is the last nail on the coffin, and there is nowhere a court can intervene? I mean... No,
we can't. We can't do that. We have all agreed here that impeachment is a political process,
yes,
not a judicial process. It becomes, of course, a judicial when it gets to Senate, because then there's a bit of a legal process there that's being fixed. However, the courts must be available for people to go there and complain. And the people must be heard, and the courts must be able to weigh the issues because Jesus was killed by mob, and they said crucify him and crucify him. Were they right? Of course, depending on the philosophy today, religious philosophy, but they were not right because he was not heard. Nobody can be condemned unheard. For instance, if we go to the Senate today and his witnesses were chased away, why won't the courts intervene and say you have to redo the process and hear him? If he is not heard and the process is not followed, and by there I've already, with lawyers, we've seen so many gaps already in the process. I'm not going to mention them here, but there's so many gaps already in that process. Whether the content of those gaps is enough, such as then to overturn the outcome will be an issue. What you do, a good lawyer would allow the process to go to the end, and impeachment is done if it is going to be done. But in the process, you pick out the gaps slowly, and then you prepare your paperwork so that as they impeach, that evening you've put in your papers in court online. And then the following morning you're heard, and if possible, you get a stay against that decision. But you can't right now go to Parliament and say, hang on, there's this gap, and therefore fix it. You allow the gaps to continue. That's what a good lawyer would wait. So you wait for them to execute their processes, make the damning statements, and every statement there you record it. In fact, you take a video and record it on account of the fact that becomes evidence. So what they're doing now, the lawyers will be doing what they call evidence collection and analysis, so that then you prepare your paperwork and keep updating on the paragraphs of the defaults that you continue to see and the features in law, and then you can submit it to court. We can't have a situation where people in a mob, whatever they are, even professors at University of Nairobi, we have represented them, they fight for positions. Even the vice chancellor, they fight for that position. So we can't say there's an ideal situation where human beings will live in harmony and do the right things. Politicians especially are the worst category to trust them to do the right thing. And therefore, we have to go to court after a political process. So let the dust settle, then we can go to court. And remember, nobody is bad enough not to be heard before the court. A murderer shall be heard, a rapist shall be heard. Everybody must be heard before the court, including Rigathi Gachagua. It is his right. So we can't remove that right. Not now, and not any other day should we have a situation where you can fathom somebody then is become a victim of a situation rightly or wrongly, and then can be heard. You've stolen, it will be tested before the courts. And I think that's the right thing.
All right. 1 minute each. Daniel, ODM did...
you know, as lawyers are looking at the loopholes on the impeachment motion on a legal process, one of the political processes and loophole we're also looking at should be on what is the level of public citizen participation on the impeachment process. And I think that one also should come out clearly, that the undoing of representative democracy, you know, that bequeath powers to the elected leaders, that I said here on set last time. How sure am I that whoever is representing me has now the capacity, as opposed to before, to still represent me in his view, all right, or her view, in the Senate on an impeachment motion, that his decision and his vote reflect my vote as a citizen of the Republic. So that one also, I foresee a situation where we also need to look at it in the impeachment portion. Do we impeach a governor without public participation, believing that members of the Senate hold that particular view in trust for us if we do not participate in that process? Remember the issue about Kivuta Kibwana's issue some times ago in Makueni, that almost the entire government of Makueni was almost being dissolved. And he was even asking, can you dissolve this entire government? Because the members of county assemblies were actually holding him into, the stake. So I think those are partly what I am looking at towards this motion. For ODM, there is disquiet around whether the party leader, the one that is given, has not the mandate, but as can be as strong and as as flexible as Honorable Raila. So there's issue around the reconstitution about the leadership, but that leaves to ODM as they reconstitute that process. But I still see that Raila still pulls swing here and there and make decisions in ODM. Like he said, he's just taken a break. He's not out of political situation forever.
All right. Again, when you see some of the changes, Gladys Wanga, now the chairman, national chairman, replacing Mbadi, of course. We have got Governor Nasir, and we have etc. But then Akinotsosi and several, I think 2 deputies in the party. Baba is not getting out of it because based on what Daniel has said, there have been a bit of some issue that there should be some sort of handing over power to other members of ODM to keep on running, spinning the wheel of the party. But here we are now, organizations are happening. Dr.
What I would say, the political, Mheshimiwa Raila has been the leader of ODM. For lack of a better word, that is his party. So his housekeeping, other than maybe they have a constitution that they came up with as a party, that they should follow in terms of executing their leadership roles, I believe is entirely on them. In that, but of course they have it has to attract issues. Each situation attracts issues, which I think they should be in a position to fix at that level. So we wouldn't like to talk too much into them. In that, I think it's in their right hands. It's their party. They're trying to make decisions. I'm sure. They have also met maybe the threshold that is expected of a political party. And what they are doing is their housekeeping. So, which I think it's not a must for the housekeeping to be peaceful. So if it's not going to be peaceful, it's not going to be fair. No situation has been fair before, and I believe I wouldn't like to talk too much about them. But I think what I'm saying is, I'm calling him His Excellency Raila. I don't know. I think, Dr. You have confused me with your opinion. So until I'm calling him His Excellency.
He is right. He is His Excellency. Yes.
Yeah, you've confused me with his opinion, but I'm praying that it goes through the AU chairmanship. And what I was saying about the Kericho impeachment, the people who elected him are the ones who are saying no to him. And then when we talk about public participation, as we successfully our deputy governor was successful impeached in Kisii County. Now we have a new one. I've seen that process. I think it works because ideally he was sworn in into office, and now within one term we're already having the second deputy governor. But what I would like to tell Kenyans, these impeachment things, they are a bit costly, but we keep complaining about our economy. That's why I would request that when people are getting to the ballot, please just choose a leader whereby you settle down on that leader, so that we are the only ones who are sabotaging the development of our country. You see now the country is at a standstill. We have to, the deputy president is being impeached. It's a whole process that works against us as Kenyans. So we can have other ways of doing stuff that can be good, that is going to enable development.
Politics dynamic. Doctor.
Thank you so much.
In 1 minute, please. Maliza.
About ODM rearrangement, the in-house business that we are witnessing. I think when I look at the component of who is who in that party and the style of staging up the leadership, One very clear person that I'm seeing is she's being prepared for a political seat in future is none other than Gladys Wanga, who has been the stalwart, supporter of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And I look at that as she's being prepared for a bigger mission in future. And maybe that of the deputy president in future, whichever way. And as about what we are expecting from the Senate, to the issues to do with the Kericho County, I'm from there. The person who was impeached is my governor. And there has been a lot of horse trading that has been happening, because I saw one of the senators actually accusing Waziri Murkomen that she was trying to coerce people towards saving Dr. Mutai. And then again, but what I'm saying as somebody from Kericho County is that let the best come out of it. I would wish that the senators actually have a very balanced approach in the whole thing. Let them get all the details of the accusations and let it consider if it is in their rightful deliberation that they will have to abort whatever the MCS did, or rather free Dr. Mutai. I have no problem. Whichever way it goes, we are praying for him. So as to the political future of this country, I want to pray that we need a Kenya that is united. We need a Kenya that is pure of political connotations. And if Gachagua will survive or if he will not survive, I think the best advice that we can give to this country is that let us remain united as a nation. And as to the government, as executive, I'm praying that, and I'm really pleading that they should listen more of what is happening on the ground than the boardroom deliberations. That will save this country.
That will save this country.
Well, but I think we also, and Wakili, we need to get the Public Participation Act at the national level enacted. Because it seems we don't have a national law that guides on how we do public participation. What is the threshold of public participation? What is that kind of public participation that is, we have county...
admissible can be...
it's quite difficult to know what meaningful threshold of public participation look like at the national level. Dr. Ogenda has just mentioned that there's been a lot of public participation, especially on the impeachment of governors in some counties. But we couldn't call what we saw in the impeachment of deputy president as a public participation, because that then could be questioned on the days when people are available. There's a whole issue around public participation, which for us, I think, keeps on going to the corridors of justice for interpretation. What does it look like? So we don't have members of parliament joining us on set, but wherever they are watching us, I think is important for us to track.
We have a bill,
yes,
but as you said, yes, the law, it may not be very clear on content because public participation is varied. Public participation on matters gender, if there's a law to regulate matters gender, and public participation on matters, finance bill, for instance, the content is different. So that's what we're grappling on. The courts have not even gotten it right. The only thing that we have closest to an interpretation of public participation is the court said, when you go to the public, notwithstanding the content of public participation, how much you reach the people, you must tabulate the proposal that were made by the people, because that's direct democracy.
Yeah.
We've taken a hybrid approach where on matters legislation, we have public participation where you go back to the people and ask them what they want. When you come to legislate, you can easily ignore what they've said. The courts have said, for a legislation to be legitimate and therefore lawful, you have to tabulate what the people said in your legislation. That in Kericho they say this, in Kilifi they say this, in Mombasa they said, in Turkana they say this. And then give reasons why you are departing, if you depart from those views. At least that is the content, highest content of public participation in terms of its regard in legislation. But public participation, content and the reach, we haven't, because you see, like if there's an act on education, everybody gets affected. Yeah. But sometimes you legislate on coconut, you legislate on tea. There are places in Turkana that don't have tea. Do you still reach them? And therefore, how variegated should you participate in the public participation issue in regard to a certain topic? Because there are many pieces of legislation that are going on. So a legislation becomes illegal if the public participation so far being the law, is that you don't tabulate what the people said and why you are departing from what they said, and say this is impossible because of cost, this is impossible because of this and this and this. Therefore, in your debate in Parliament, which I have not even seen, you say you debate, for instance, on the impeachment of Gachagua. When we went to Central, they said you should not impeach Gachagua because of ABCD, but as Parliament, it's untenable to go with what the people have said because we depart from them for the following reasons, and then it becomes part of the answer. I believe that is what the court envisaged. But is it happening today? It's not happening. They execute the business and walk away, whether or not our views have been taken into consideration or not, and that becomes an illegality. So that's what I'm saying. I think this process has to go to the courts. Of course, we get to work as lawyers, that's fine. But the point is not the work. The point is we keep testing. We'll get the money. We get the money, which is a good thing. But the point is we keep testing whether Parliament did the right thing. And I'll want a situation where the person's voice is the highest voice as opposed to the representative voice.
You know what happens? It's always so good when I have you on set, because I'm always in class. The only thing that I don't pay is school fees. Gladly saying. There's somebody saying that Daniel Orogo should not try baking. I think this is based on what you said, that the cake that we are baking as a nation, we keep on mixing ingredients.
It's at ingredient level.
I also commented.
Why me?
I commented.
Somebody saying?
Daniel Orogo should not try baking. We'll mess. I like that. Thank you so much for joining us on the set, gentlemen. And lady, George Kithi, Wakili, Advocate of the High Court, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Daniel Orogo, a brilliant mind as well. Thank you so much for being with us. Daktari, asante sana, Evelyn Ogendo, and Dr. Rotich. Dr. Rotich is an economist by profession, but a lot of bias in as far as politics is concerned. Thank you so much, my brother. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are taking a break, and when you come back, the Senate is going to start sitting. The first session, in as far as the impeachment of Governor Mutai is concerned. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'll take you through that process later on. So stay with us. Let's take a break with the weather, of course. My name is Victor. Good morning.